Okay, we are live. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. This has been a very challenging year for the finance team, and we decided, with questions that have been coming up, to hold this Q&A session. So one of the things I put together, and it's just very brief, I'm not going to go through it in too much detail. It's not on the screen, but I guess we'll pull it up later, maybe. For those... Oh, can you hear me now? Okay, thanks. The first page is just a very summarized version of our current year operations, our revenue, which includes giving and other sources of income, our expenses. It's very summarized and compared to our budget, just to give you kind of a snapshot of where we are. And as you can see, right now our expenses are greater than the money that we've taken in so far this year, and especially compared to our budget. Now, the one thing that does typically happen is the last couple months of the year, especially December, there tends to be a bump in giving because of the holidays. So hopefully we'll at least break even, but it's just hard to predict. This page, on the second page, and thank you, Denise, for doing this. She kind of went back into history, so you could kind of see the trend of, and it's a bunch of numbers, but basically you can see that our revenue has been decreasing over the years, as has been the giving, but our expenses haven't really decreased as much. And we go to the next one, Guy. So on the third page, there's just a nice little graph, and it's just very simple. This just shows our congregational giving, and you can kind of see where it's basically dropped the last couple of years, and it's almost flat. So it's not really keeping up with our expenses. And, the ministry teams have been very diligent in, spending the money, very wisely. The office team, the trustees, everybody's working to keep our costs down, and trying to manage our funds well. And one of the things that we did this year with our budgeting process is we looked at what the giving was, kind of projected out what we thought the revenue would be, and we tried to limit the expenses to that. So we did cut some expenses. So what's happened this year, again, like the first page shows, and this last chart here, the blue is revenue, orange is expenses, and as you can see, as we get into, especially the last few years, the expenses are greater than our revenue. So how have we paid for things? Well, first of all, the pandemic didn't help. There had been a decline in giving even prior to the pandemic. I think that just hurried it along. But we had the proceeds from the federal program, the payroll protection program loan. That was $70 grand. That got us through 2020. That allowed us to pay some apportionments in 2020. 2021 was trying to recover. There was no more federal programs out there for us, but the building wasn't fully in use. 2022 was the first year that the building was fully in use, so now you have utilities, you have things going on. Ministry teams were starting to kind of become more active again. So our expenses went up, but the giving just hasn't, and other revenue sources, it just hasn't kept pace with that. This year, we're current with our obligations. We did have to take out an advance on a line of credit, which has been repaid. But we've only made one apportionment payment this year. At this point, we don't think we'll make another one. However, it depends on what happens in the last month of the year. Last year, 2022, we made 3 apportionment payments. One of those was based on a donation, so technically we only had enough to pay 2. And going forward, we're working on the budgets now for 2024. We've asked the ministry teams to, pray on their budgets and what they want to do and submit that. So In the next couple weeks, we'll be putting that together. We'll look at our pledge cards. And once again, we're going to take the approach, kind of like you run your checkbook, or back in the day we ran a checkbook. This is how much I have, so this is all I can spend. And the budget will be based upon what our projected revenue is. One of the things that's different is that, or not really too different, is we really do have to pay our apportionments. It's starting to affect us in different ways. I know one of the questions was what happens, and I'll let Pastor Shannon repeat that, but it also had an impact. We got turned down for a grant because we were not making all of our apportionment payments. So, with that, I guess I'll let Pastor Shannon speak. Someone had previously asked, well, what happens if we don't pay our apportionments?
So I said a little bit more than I'll probably say for a live stream about what happens if we don't pay our apportionments. But I did want to say that mission shares, or as they're now called, apportionments. And if you have other questions, those of you watching online, John, if you have more questions, you're always able to reach out. But our apportionments are a really important part of what I was talking about today in the sermon on giving. When we can put our money into something and share with more people, that can make a bigger difference, right? So our apportionment money goes to organizations like UMCOR, and the Wesley Foundation, right? So Ella is part of the Wesley Foundation. And so our church, in a small way, I'm sure percentage-wise, but churches like ours are supporting those organizations that are continuing to form our own congregation members, as well as doing relief work, as well as all the different things that our apportionment money does. So that's why it's really important that we do that. And but the conference is in a place right now where, everybody is struggling with this. This is not a unique problem to Trinity. Everybody is struggling with finding ways to invite young families to come back. Everybody is struggling with finances and trying to figure out what church looks like post-pandemic. So this is not a new problem, and it is one that we are trying to be creative with how we figure out. And the conference isn't like breathing down our necks and calling me every week, where's your apportionment money, which I believe has been common in the past for the conference to do, because this is our responsibility. But they recognize that we are all in this trying to figure out new world kind of thing. The other thing is that we are not a big fundraising church. We might have used to, pre-pandemic, have been a big fundraising church in terms of revenues, and we are not currently doing that. And the good thing about that is we should not budget based on fundraising, right? Like fundraising should be the kind of thing that helps us when we want to do a new ministry or a particular project. I've been in churches where we fundraised so that way we could pay our utilities and our pastor, and that is not what we should be doing, right? But that would help with some of our mission, and many people have been doing things like that. Wendy has gotten grants before for ASP. Kay gets grants for our refugee program. I just signed $2,000 for the mustard seed. So grant for our refugees. So those kinds of things we are doing. It's just, what else do we need to do? Can we do? And do we want to spend the time and effort on fundraising instead of ministry? And maybe that means we have to do more local ministry, because sometimes that evens out in terms of makes it less expensive, but we're still able to make a big impact. So these are all things that we're thinking about and trying to figure out. Any others? Zeke has no other questions. Yeah.
Wanda, correct me if I'm wrong. So I don't think anybody on the finance, most of you know me, I'm Denise Berry on the finance team. We don't think it's that the congregation is not giving. We know that the people we have are giving, but we have less giving units than we used to have. So as most mainline denominations do, and that's partially due to less participation in church, but also some of our faithful senior members passing away. So, and I feel very confident that the ministry teams are all spending at this point as little as they can. If they spent any less, they wouldn't be doing ministry. So it's our fixed costs, which I'm not making any suggestions, but it is payroll, utilities, insurance, I mean, things we have to pay. And so I would just say, having been on the finance team a long time, I think your leadership has done their due diligence, really trying to reduce expenses where we can. So would you agree with that, Wanda and Gail?
Definitely. It's amazing what the trustees do to keep this building going. How old is? I think Guy was just recently telling us about something. Oh, that thing's 30 years old. They're keeping it going. I mean, they're doing everything they can to keep our costs down. I'm just amazed at what they do, to be honest. And, you know, that's a treasure that we have. But, you know, to Denise's point, a little simple graph that I did shows it. Like, the giving is down, but our expenses are not down. And these are mostly fixed costs. And unfortunately, right now, if the revenue stream stays the same, we can't cover our fixed costs and apportionments. Now, what the magic number for apportionment payments is, I don't know. That magic number to shoot for, is it a minimum of 6? I don't know, but it's got to be more than 1 or 2. Oh, okay. We yeah. Oh, which one? Oh, sorry.
I said the goal with apportionments is 100%, but at least over 50 shows that we're making an effort. And not that we're not making an effort, because we obviously are, but, you know, 50% of our payments is a lot different than 1 in January, you know?
Right. So that's our challenge, and, you know, that's what we're looking at as we work on the budgets. So very challenging, so definitely be in prayer for that as well. Did you have a question, Dominic? No? Oh, okay.
And I think we just do encourage everyone, as I said last week in worship, just pray about your giving. And if you have ideas of how we could generate more funds, we're all ears.
Yeah, and I know some people probably couldn't make it, and I know there's been lots of questions, but I think we just wanted to let you know there's no mismanagement. Like, the team, the office staff, the ministry teams, the trustees, there is no mismanagement of the funds. They are really very diligent in how the funds are spent. You know, we're open to ideas. We're looking at different ways, as Pastor Shannon talked about some of the challenges. So we just wanted to be very transparent. And please feel free to email the finance team. We don't have an email address. But I guess if accountant at Trinity, yeah, accountant at trinityfrederick.org, if you want to email some questions, you know, that come up, we are definitely happy to answer those questions. We just want to be transparent and want everyone to know what's going on.
The amount that is shown here for apportionments, that's just through the month of September. That's not the whole year.
That, in which column? That is the budget. So she's looking at that second column, which shows if we were paying every month, like we were supposed to, we would have paid about 48,000. However, that first column shows we've only paid 1 month.
So
which
for
is
the entire year,
for the
what would it
entire
be?
year is
About 60?
60,000 for the year is what's due. And the apportionment increased for next year. Yes. Well, thank you. And again, it's accountant@trinityfrederick.org. Oh, Guy has a question?
No, just for the benefit of the stream, speaking from the trustees, just so everybody knows, we have a mixed facility here. Part of it is 60 years old, and part of it is 30 years old. We have 22 heating, ventilating, air conditioning systems, 5 of which are over 30 years old. Most of the others were actually changed out and replaced in the last 10 years. That's all been paid for, but we have 4 units that are through-the-wall units that all are beyond their obsolescence, 3 of which have actually failed and will be in our budget to replace this year. We had 2 of them in the budget last year that we didn't replace. This year that number is going to be 3. That one item different from cash flow is probably about $12,000 just for that one item. That was not in our cash flow last year. But Shannon's sitting next to me and says, and we need a new roof. The part of our facility has flat roofs. Those flat roofs have an expected lifespan of 15 years. They are 30 years old. We have been doing constant maintenance on them, and they are currently working, but they are way past due to be replaced. Estimate for those roofs, about $100,000. So this is cash flow that isn't in a regular budget. That's cash flow that we would have to talk about how we would raise it. So trustees have quite a few challenges. That's part of the big budget.
And we are thankful for their faithfulness and for our finance team's faithfulness and our ministry team's faithfulness. So just continue to pray. If you come across grants, even if you don't think that there's something your ministry team could use, you can send them our way if you think another part of the church would be interested. And consider your own giving and what you're able to give. So,
And volunteer.
yes. Yes. So thank you all.
Thank you.
And thanks, Guy, for the live stream.